They say the loudest sound in the world isn't a scream. It's the silence that follows when a giant walks into a room. Lucian wasn't just an alpha. He was an evolutionary mistake, a primal whose body grew until his own bones should have crushed under the weight. Locked in a mountain fortress because his pack decided that keeping him alive was safer than letting him die. 4 omegas offered to him over the years. 2 dead before dawn. The others shattered beyond repair. And then there was Seraphina, a fragile omega who'd spent her entire life being told she was too small to matter, clutching a bloodline secret beneath her ribs and a plan that would either liberate the pack or bury her in the snow. She climbed that mountain expecting to die. What she found was a man who'd learned to move through shadows so his hands wouldn't accidentally destroy everything soft they touched. Here's what the Shadow Ridge Council didn't tell Seraphina. Lucian didn't break those omegas. They did. They'd been feeding him rage serum for years, weaponizing his body, and then blamed him when the beast they manufactured did exactly what they designed it to do. Seraphina didn't come to survive Lucian. She came to claim him. Because the only way to stop a high alpha harvesting fear for power is to give him a reckoning he never saw coming. What happens when the omega everyone dismissed as fragile and the primal alpha everyone called a monster discover the bond between them doesn't just connect their souls. It ignites a bloodline that was supposed to stay buried. Stick around. This is about to get primal. Hello beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. Or if you're new here, welcome to a story that's going to sink its teeth into you and refuse to let go. I'm so glad you're here. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Are you curled up cozy, killing time on your commute, or maybe sneaking this listen in during a midnight scroll? And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time. Trust me, you're going to want to see how Seraphina breaks the cage they built around both of them. Hit that subscribe button because what's about to happen in that mountain fortress? Let's just say the pack will never be the same. Now let me take you somewhere cold. Somewhere high. Somewhere the air itself tastes like stone and old blood. Everyone says when Lucian moves, even the wolves stop howling. The council hall smelled like pine smoke and fear. Seraphina stood at the center of the stone circle, her bare feet cold against the ancient rock, staring up at the elders who'd spent her whole life looking through her like she was made of glass. 23 years she'd lived in the shadow of Shadow Ridge. 23 years of being told she was too delicate, too breakable, too omega to be anything but a burden. 23 years of watching bigger, stronger wolves claim their places while she was shuffled to the margins. She pressed her palms together, fingers trembling not from cold but from the weight of what she was about to say. High Alpha Daemon sat on his carved throne, his eyes like chips of flint. Behind him, the mountain loomed, black granite cliffs that pierced the sky, and somewhere up there, in the fortress no one dared approach, lived the thing they all pretended didn't exist. "Speak, little Omega," Daemon said, his voice dripping with bored contempt. "The council has more pressing matters than your. I want him." The words dropped into the hall like stones into still water. Silence. The kind of silence that has teeth. Daemon leaned forward. "What did you say?" Seraphina lifted her chin, her heart hammering against her ribs like it was trying to escape. "I'm asking for the right to be offered to Lucian. I want to be his mate." The council erupted. Voices crashed over her. Laughter, outrage, disbelief. Someone called her suicidal. Someone else called her insane. But Seraphina didn't look away from Daemon. Because she saw it, just for a heartbeat, the flicker of fear in his eyes. Not fear of what she'd do. Fear of what Lucian would become if someone finally survived him. High in his mountain cage, Lucian stood at the window of his stone prison, watching the snow fall. He felt it again, that pull, that impossible tug toward something he didn't deserve. Another omega coming to break against him. He closed his eyes and pressed his forehead against the frozen glass, his massive frame shuddering with the weight of what he'd become. "Please," he thought. Asterisk, not another one. Don't send me another one to destroy. Asterisk. But deep in the fortress's foundation, something ancient stirred. A bloodline that had been sleeping for generations, waiting for the moment when a sun-seer finally found her way to the dark. The climb took 3 hours. Seraphina's escort, 2 stone-faced enforcers who hadn't spoken a word since they'd shackled her wrists, moved like men walking toward a funeral. Their own, probably. The higher they climbed, the thinner the air became, until every breath felt like swallowing knives. The fortress appeared through the mist like something out of a nightmare. Black stone walls rising from the mountain itself, windows dark as empty eye sockets, the whole structure radiating a silence so complete it made Seraphina's ears ring. No birds sang here. No wind dared whistle through the crags. Even the snow seemed to fall more quietly, as if the mountain itself had learned to hold its breath around whatever lived inside those walls. The enforcers stopped at the massive iron door. One of them, Grant she thought his name was, pulled a key from his belt with hands that shook just enough to notice. "Last chance to change your mind, Omega." Seraphina looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw the way he stood 3 steps back from the door. The way his eyes kept darting to the windows above like he expected something to come crashing through at any moment. This man was terrified. They all were. "Open it," she said. The door groaned like a dying thing. The sound echoed through the mountain, and somewhere deep inside the fortress, something moved. Seraphina felt it more than heard it, a presence so massive it displaced the very air around it. Grant practically threw the key at her feet. "Food gets delivered once a week. Someone will check on you in 3 days." His voice dropped. "If you're still alive." Then they were gone, disappearing down the mountain path like men fleeing a burning building, and Seraphina was alone with the door hanging open behind her and the darkness ahead. She stepped inside. The entrance hall was cavernous, built to accommodate something far larger than any normal wolf. The ceilings soared 30 feet high. The doorways were wide enough to drive a carriage. Through. Everything was stone. Cold, gray, unforgiving stone that drank the light and gave nothing back. But it was clean. That's what struck her first. No dust, no debris, no signs of the savage beast they'd told her lived here. The floors were swept. The walls bore no claw marks. Something was maintaining this place. "You shouldn't have come." The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. Woof. Like gravel being crushed under an avalanche. It vibrated in Seraphina's chest, made her bones hum with the resonance of it. She turned slowly, scanning the shadows. "Where are you? Does it matter? Oz. You'll be dead by morning anyway." A shift in the darkness at the far end of the hall. Not movement exactly, but a compression of shadows, as if something was pulling the dark around itself like a cloak. Seraphina's heart hammered, but she forced her voice steady. "The last 4 omegas they sent you, did you kill them?" Silence. Long enough that she thought he wouldn't answer. "Yes." The word fell like an executioner's blade. "Did you want to?" Another pause. This one felt different. Heavier. What kind of question is that? An honest one. Seraphina took a step forward. Then another. Her hands were still shaking, but her feet kept moving. "I'm going to die anyway, right? So answer me honestly. Did you want to kill them?" The shadows erupted. Not toward her, but away. A massive shape retreating deeper into the fortress with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for something so enormous. Seraphina heard stone crack somewhere in the darkness. Heard the groan of foundations adjusting to sudden weight. "Go," the voice said, and now it sounded desperate. Ragged. "Get out. Run back down the mountain and tell them I refused you. Tell them anything. Just leave." "No. You don't understand." "Then help me understand." Seraphina's voice cracked. Not with fear, but with something fiercer. Anger. Frustration. 23 years of being dismissed and underestimated pouring out in a rush. "Everyone keeps telling me what I can't survive, what I'm too fragile for, what will break me. But no one, not once, has asked me what I think I can do." She was shouting now, her words echoing off the stone walls. "You think you're the only one who's been locked away. You think you're the only one the pack has decided is too dangerous, too wrong, too much. I've been in a cage my whole life, Lucian. At least yours has walls I can see. The silence that followed felt alive. Then slowly he emerged from the shadows. Seraphina's breath stopped. The stories hadn't lied. If anything, they'd understated it. Lucian was a mountain given flesh. 8 feet tall, maybe 9. It was hard to tell with the way he hunched, trying to make himself smaller. Shoulders so broad they barely fit through the doorways built for him. Arms thick as tree trunks, corded with muscle that looked like it had been carved from granite. His hands, God, his hands could palm her skull like a child's ball. But his face, that's what undid her. He was beautiful. Devastatingly, heartbreakingly beautiful. Strong jaw softened by a beard that hadn't been trimmed in months. Dark hair falling into eyes that were. She stepped closer, full of such profound sadness it made her chest ache. This wasn't the face of a monster. This was the face of a man who'd been told. He was one so many times he'd started to believe it. "Don't," he whispered, and his voice was different now. Smaller. Almost human. "Don't come closer." "Why not?" "Because I don't trust myself." His hands were clenched into fists at his sides, every muscle in his massive frame locked tight. "Because the moon is rising and the rage serum they feed me makes everything feel like violence, and I can't, I won't." "Rage serum." Seraphina stopped. "What are you talking about?" Lucian's expression flickered. Confusion. Suspicion. "The food. The medicine. What they send up every week to keep me healthy." He spat the last words like poison. "It's supposed to control the aggression. But all it does is make everything worse. Makes me want to tear the world apart just to feel something other than this." He cut himself off, jaw clenched so hard she heard teeth grind. Seraphina's mind raced. The council. Damon. The way Grant had looked so eager to leave. "Lucian, what if it's not medicine? What if they're doing it on purpose?" His head snapped up. "What? Think about it. You're the perfect weapon. Too dangerous to use, too valuable to kill. So they keep you unstable, keep you terrifying, and use the threat of you to control everyone else." The pieces were falling into place, the conspiracy crystallizing. "They didn't send those omegas here to tame you. They sent them here to die. To prove how dangerous you are. To justify keeping you locked up here forever." Lucian stared at her. In his eyes, she saw the exact moment he realized she might be right. Saw the horror of it wash over him, followed by something darker. Rage. Real rage, not the manufactured kind. "I killed them," he said, his voice breaking. "They're dead because of me, and you're telling me. They're dead because of Damon." Seraphina closed the distance between them before she could think better of it. Before fear or sense could stop her. "And I'm not going to let him add me to that list. Or you." She reached out, placed her small hand against his chest. The effect was instantaneous. Lightning. That's what it felt like. Not painful, but electric. A current that shot from her palm through his body and back into hers, completing a circuit that had been broken for generations. The fortress shook. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howled in confusion as they felt it too. A pulse of power so ancient and primal it made the pack bonds tremble. Lucian gasped. His hand coming up to cover hers. Not to push her away. To hold her there. "What?" he breathed. "What are you?" Seraphina looked up at him, and for the first time in her life, felt the truth of her bloodline singing in her veins. "I'm the one who's going to set us both free." The moon rose higher. In the council hall far below, Damon felt the shockwave and knew, with cold certainty, that he'd made a terrible mistake. The cage was open, and the monster he'd spent years creating had just found his reason to break the chains. Lucian pulled his hand back like she'd burned him, stumbling away until his shoulders hit the stone wall hard enough to crack it. His chest heaved, eyes wild, and Seraphina saw him fighting something. Not her but himself. The bond humming between them like a live wire. "You need to stay back," he rasped. "The serum, it's worse at night. I can feel it in my blood telling me to." He cut himself off, jaw clenched. "I won't hurt you. I won't." Seraphina's hand still tingled where she'd touched him. The connection hadn't broken, not really. It just stretched between them now, invisible but undeniable. When was the last time you ate? He blinked, thrown by the question. This morning. They brought the meal at dawn like always. Show me. Lucian hesitated, then moved deeper into the fortress with that same careful grace, a giant learning to exist in a world too small for him. Seraphina followed, her eyes adjusting to the dim light filtering through narrow windows. The place was massive but sparse. No furniture that wasn't bolted down. No decorations. Nothing breakable. It was a cell designed to look like a home. The kitchen was a cavern of stone and iron. On the counter sat a covered tray, untouched. Lucian gestured to it without getting close, like it might bite him. They leave it sealed. Council's orders. For your protection, they said. Seraphina lifted the lid. The smell hit her first. Meat, rich and bloody, mixed with something else. Something medicinal that made her nose wrinkle. She leaned closer, studying the crystalline residue on the surface of the food. Her grandmother had been a healer before she died. Had taught Seraphina to recognize poisons by scent alone. This wasn't medicine. This was a stimulant. Aggressive, potent, designed to flood the system with artificial rage. How long have they been feeding you this? Lucian's voice came from the shadows behind her. 7 years. Since the day they brought me up here. 7 years. Seraphina's blood ran cold. And before that I was just... He paused, and she heard the weight of memory in his silence. I was just big, strong. But I never hurt anyone. Not until they locked me up here and started the treatments. Seraphina turned to face him, and in the half-light, she caught a glimpse of something in his expression. Not the monster they'd told her about. Just a man, young still, who'd been systematically broken. Tell me about the first Omega, she said softly. The first one they sent. Lucian's hands curled into fists. Her name was Elena. She seemed kind. Scared but kind. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I tried to be gentle. Tried to stay in control. But the rage came anyway like fire in my veins, and I couldn't stop it. When I woke up He couldn't finish. Didn't need to. Seraphina's mind raced, pieces clicking together with horrifying clarity. Lucian, what if you weren't supposed to stop it? What if that's exactly what Damon wanted? His head snapped up. Why would he? Because you're not a wolf to him. You're a weapon. She moved closer, urgency making her bold. Think about it. The High Alpha's power comes from fear. He keeps the pack in line by making them believe there's something worse than him waiting in these mountains. But if you were stable, sane, controllable, you'd be a threat. A primal alpha who could challenge his authority. Lucian stared at her, and she watched the realization dawn across his features. Horror. Fury. And underneath it all, a grief so profound it made her ache. He killed them, Lucian breathed. He killed them using me. And he'll kill me too if we let him. Seraphina reached for the tray, grabbed it with both hands despite the weight. Which is why you're not eating this poison anymore. She carried it to the window and hurled the entire thing out into the night. The tray tumbled down the mountainside, disappearing into the darkness below. Lucian lunged forward. Wait, I need that to survive. The withdrawal, it's exactly what we need. Seraphina turned to face him, her small frame blocking the window like she could actually stop him if he tried to retrieve it. Yes, it's going to be hell. Yes, you're going to feel like you're dying. But that poison is the only thing keeping you trapped up here. Once it's out of your system, you'll finally know who you really are. And what if who I really am is worse? His voice cracked. What if the rage isn't the serum? What if it's just me? Seraphina held his gaze, unwavering. Then I'll deal with it. But I don't believe that. I felt what's inside you, Lucian. When I touched you when the bond sparked, that wasn't violence I felt. That was protection. Devotion. A man so desperate not to cause harm that he's been living in shadows for 7 years. Lucian's breath came in ragged gasps. The war inside him was visible on his face. Hope battling despair, trust fighting instinct. You don't know what you're asking. I know exactly what I'm asking. She stepped closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating off his massive frame. I'm asking you to trust me. Trust yourself. Trust that the Pack Council has been lying to both of us for years. For a long moment Lucian didn't move. Then slowly he sank to his knees. Even kneeling, he was nearly at her eye level. If I hurt you, you won't. If I do, then I'll make sure you never forgive yourself. She said it with a small, grim smile. But it won't come to that. Because starting tomorrow, I'm hunting our own food. I'm cooking our own meals. And you're going to learn what it feels like to be clean. Lucian's eyes searched hers, looking for doubt, for fear, for any sign that she didn't understand the magnitude of what she was proposing. But Serafina had spent her entire life being underestimated. She knew exactly what she was doing. Why? He finally whispered. Why risk this? You could have run. Could have told them I refused you and lived. Because I'm tired of living in a cage. The truth of it burned in her chest. Because every wolf I've ever known has looked at me and seen something fragile. Something to be protected or pitted or ignored. But you, when you look at me, you see someone who might actually be strong enough to stand next to you. I see someone who's going to get herself killed trying to save a lost cause. Then it's a good thing I've always been terrible at taking advice. She held out her hand. Do we have a deal? No more council food. No more poison. Just us against whatever comes next. Lucian stared at her outstretched hand like it was a lifeline thrown into drowning water. Slowly, carefully, he reached out and took it. His palm dwarfed hers, could have crushed every bone without effort, but his grip was gentle, reverent. The bond flared again, stronger this time. Not painful but intense, a recognition on some cellular level that they were meant for this. Meant for each other. In the council hall, Damon sat in his throne room, staring at the report Grant had just delivered. The Omega was still alive. More than that, she'd touched the primal and survived. Already, whispers were spreading through the pack. Questions Damon couldn't afford to have asked. He leaned back, fingers drumming against the armrest. How long until the next serum delivery? Grant shifted uncomfortably. 4 days, high alpha. But after that shockwave, the pack is restless. They felt it. They're asking what it means. It means nothing. Damon's voice was ice. The giant is having a reaction, that's all. The Omega will be dead by morning, and we'll send up a double dose to stabilize him. But even as he said it, Damon felt the lie stick in his throat. That pulse of power hadn't felt like instability, had felt like awakening. He stood abruptly. Summon Morgana. Tell her it's time to handle this personally. Grant's eyes widened. The beta. High alpha she's obsessed with Lucian and jealous enough to do what needs to be done. Damon smiled, cold and sharp. If the Omega won't die naturally, we'll simply help nature along. High in the fortress, Lucian and Serafina sat together in the vast kitchen, the space between them charged with possibility. Neither spoke. They didn't need to. The hard part hadn't started yet. The withdrawal would be brutal, the danger real. But for the first time in 7 years, Lucian felt something other than despair. He felt hope. And it terrified him more than any rage ever had. The withdrawal hit on the second night. Serafina woke to the sound of stone cracking. Not the sharp snap of a break, but the slow, grinding protest of rock being compressed by impossible force. She bolted upright in the small room Lucian had given her, the only chamber in the fortress with a door that locked from the inside, and pressed her ear to the wood. Nothing. Just that terrible grinding sound somewhere deep in the fortress. She grabbed the iron poker from the fireplace, laughable as a weapon but better than nothing, and eased the door open. The hallway was dark, moonlight streaming through the high windows in silver bars that cut the shadows into pieces. The grinding had stopped, replaced by something worse. Breathing. Ragged, desperate, like a drowning man trying to surface. Serafina found him in the great hall, curled on the floor despite his massive size. Lucian's body was locked in tremors, every muscle seized tight. Sweat poured off him in rivers, pooling on the stone. His hands were pressed flat against the floor, and she saw the cracks radiating outward from his palms, the source of that grinding sound. He was literally crushing the fortress's foundation just trying to hold himself still. Lucian. She dropped the poker and ran to him. Up close, she could see his eyes were unfocused, pupils blown wide. His skin burned like he'd been thrown into a forge. Don't. The word came out strangled. Don't come closer. Can't control. Everything hurts. I need. His back arched, another tremor ripping through him. More stone cracked. Serafina realized with cold clarity that if he lost control completely, if his body unleashed the full force of his strength in this state, the entire fortress might come down. Listen to me. She knelt beside him, close enough to feel the heat radiating off him in waves. This is the poison leaving your system. Your body's been saturated with it for 7 years. It's going to fight you. But you're stronger than it. You hear me? You're stronger. Serafina, please. His voice broke. I can feel it. The rage. It's not the serum. It's me. It's always been me. No. She grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to focus on her. His skin was scalding, but she didn't let go. That's what they wanted you to believe. That's how they kept you here. But I can feel the bond between us, Lucian. I can feel what's really inside you, and it's not rage. Pain. It's fear. It's 7 years of being told you're a monster until you started believing it. His eyes cleared for just a moment, finding hers. In that brief window she saw him, really him, fighting his way through the chemical storm in his blood. I need you to trust me, she said. One more time. Can you do that? Lucian's jaw clenched. Then, barely perceptible, he nodded. Serafina pulled his head down to her lap, her small body cradling his massive skull. She pressed one hand to his chest, right over his heart, and began to sing. An old song, one her grandmother had taught her. The words were in a language older than the pack, older than the council, older than any of their lies. A sun-seer lullaby, meant to calm the beast inside all wolves. She didn't know if it would work. Didn't know if her untrained bloodline could do anything more than spark a connection. But she sang anyway, pouring every ounce of will she had into the bond between them, trying to anchor him to something other than pain. Slowly, impossibly, Lucian's breathing began to even out. The tremors didn't stop, but they lessened. His hands unclenched from the cracked stone. And after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, he slumped against her, exhausted but conscious. You stayed, he whispered. Of course I stayed. Serafina's hand was still on his chest, feeling the hammer of his heartbeat. I told you. We're in this together. They sat like that until dawn, her singing softly, him breathing, both of them pretending the worst was over. It wasn't. Morgana arrived 2 nights later, and she didn't come alone. Serafina was in the kitchen, trying to figure out how to hunt with no weapons and no training, when she heard the outer door open. Not the grinding protest of rusty hinges, but a soft, oiled silence. Someone had been here before. Someone with a key. She grabbed the closest thing to hand, a heavy iron pan, and moved toward the entrance hall, keeping to the shadows the way she'd watched Lucian do. Voices drifted through the stone corridors. 2 of them. One she didn't recognize. The other made her blood freeze. Should have died by now, Grant was saying. 3 days without the serum, and the giant should be a feral mess. Instead, I'm hearing he's getting better. Because the omega is stabilizing him. The woman's voice was silk over steel. Morgana. Serafina had seen her exactly once, during a pack gathering. Beautiful, powerful, everything an alpha would want in a mate. And clearly obsessed with Lucian in a way that had nothing to do with love. That's why we need to remove her. Permanently. Damon's orders. Damon's blessing. The distinction was subtle but telling. He wants it done quietly. An accident. The giant's withdrawal made him violent. The poor little Omega never stood a chance. Seraphina's mind raced. Lucian was upstairs, sleeping off another night of brutal withdrawal. He was stronger than yesterday, clearer but still weak. Still vulnerable. If these two found him like this. She didn't wait to hear more. Ran. Took the stairs 3 at a time. Her small size finally an advantage as she flew up the spiral path. Behind her, she heard the moment they realized she'd been listening. Heard Morgana's sharp curse and Grant's heavy footsteps giving chase. Lucian's chamber was at the top of the highest tower. Seraphina burst through the door and slammed it behind her, throwing the bolt. Lucian, wake up. We have company. He stirred on the massive bed that looked like it had been carved from a single piece of stone. His eyes opened, still bloodshot from the withdrawal, but alert. What? Morgana and Grant. They're here to kill me and blame it on you. She grabbed his arm, tried to pull him up. We need to move. Now. But Lucian was already shaking his head. I can barely stand. If they come through that door, then I'll hold them off until you can. Seraphina grabbed the iron poker she'd kept near the door. Laughable against 2 trained enforcers, but she'd be damned if she died without a fight. The door shuddered. Not from a knock but from impact. Grant's shoulder probably. The bolt held, but the wood around it cracked. Last chance, Omega, Morgana called through the door. Open up and we'll make it quick. You won't even feel it. Go to hell, Seraphina shouted back. Morgana laughed. Have it your way. The next impact splintered the door. The one after that tore the bolt free. The door exploded inward, and Grant came through first, all muscle and malicious intent. Morgana followed, her eyes already glowing with the partial shift that made betas so dangerous. Seraphina swung the poker with everything she had. Grant caught it mid-swing, ripped it from her hands like she was a child. He backhanded her almost casually, and she flew across the room, slamming into the wall hard enough to drive the air from her lungs. Pain exploded through her ribs. The world tilted. Now that's just sad, Grant said, advancing. You really thought you could. Lucian moved. He shouldn't have been able to. 3 days of withdrawal, body still burning through poison, barely able to stand. But Seraphina was bleeding, Seraphina was hurt, and something in Lucian snapped. Not into rage but into something colder, more focused. He surged off the bed with a speed that defied his size, covering the distance between them in a heartbeat. His fist caught Grant in the chest, and the enforcer went down like he'd been hit by an avalanche. Ribs shattered audibly. Grant's scream turned into a wet gurgle. Morgana froze, her confident smirk evaporating. Lucian, wait. I was only following orders. You know I've always cared about you. You came to kill her. Lucian's voice was dead calm, terrifying in its steadiness. You came into my home, hurt my mate, and now you want mercy? Your mate. Morgana's eyes went wide. Lucian, she's nothing. A broken little Omega who doesn't understand what you need. But I do. I've always. Get out. He took a step forward and Morgana actually backed up. Take Grant and crawl back to Damon. Tell him if he sends anyone else up this mountain, I'm coming down. And I won't be alone. Morgana looked between Lucian and Seraphina, calculation flickering across her beautiful features. She was weighing odds, measuring risks. Finally, she grabbed Grant by the collar and started dragging him toward the door. The enforcer was barely conscious, wheezing through his ruined chest. At the threshold, Morgana paused. You're making a mistake, Lucian. That bond you're so proud of. It'll kill her. Primal alphas don't get happy endings. Ask Elena. Oh wait, you can't. Then she was gone, Grant's body leaving a smear of blood across the stone floor. The moment they disappeared, Lucian's legs gave out. He collapsed, the brief surge of adrenaline spent. Serafina forced herself to move despite the pain screaming through her ribs, crawling across the floor to him. "You idiot," she gasped, pressing her hands to his face. "You should have let them take me. You're not strong enough for this yet." "Never." Lucian's eyes found hers, and the intensity in them stole her breath. "Never again. I won't watch another Omega die because I was too weak to protect her. I'm not dying." Serafina leaned her forehead against his. "And neither are you. But Morgana's right about one thing, we can't stay here. Damon knows now. Knows we're bonding. Knows you're getting stronger. He'll send an army next time. Then we leave." Lucian's arms came up carefully and wrapped around her. Even weakened, even hurting, he was gentle. "Tomorrow. Soon as I can walk. We'll go before they can come back." Serafina wanted to argue, wanted to tell him he wasn't ready. But she felt it too, the countdown that had started the moment Morgana walked away. They had hours, maybe a day at most, before Damon made his next move. Cage was open, but the real test was still coming. And neither of them was sure they'd survive it. Down in the council hall, Morgana dropped Grant's broken body at Damon's feet. Blood pooled on the pristine marble, seeping into the cracks between stones. "He's bonding with her," Morgana said, her voice flat. "The primal is lucid, strong, and completely devoted to that wretched Omega." Damon stared at Grant's ruined chest, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled. "Good." Morgana blinked. "Good. If Lucian leaves the fortress, he breaks the treaty that keeps him alive." Damon stood, his eyes glittering with cold calculation. "The moment he sets foot on Pac lands with that Omega, I have every legal right to put him down. And unlike you, I won't fail." He turned to the assembled enforcers waiting in the shadows. 20 of them. The Pac's finest warriors. "Prepare the silver nets. Ready the tranquilizers. And someone find me a wolfsbane expert. If the primal wants to play hero, we'll give him exactly what he deserves." Morgana's lips curved into a vicious smile. "And the Omega? She dies with him." Damon's voice was ice. "Publicly. So every other ambitious little wolf understands what happens when you challenge the High Alpha's order." The enforcers moved out, their footsteps echoing through the hall like a death march. The war for Shadow Ridge Pack had begun. They had one night. One night before Damon's enforcers would come. One night before the choice between flight and death became real. The mating moon rose like a silver eye, impossibly large, turning the fortress into a palace of shadows and light. Serafina felt it pull at something deep in her chest, not painful but insistent. A biological imperative older than language, older than reason. The moon knew what needed to happen. Her body knew. And judging by the way Lucian had been avoiding her since sunset, his body knew too. She found him on the highest battlement, standing at the edge where the mountain dropped away into darkness. The wind whipped at his hair, at the simple shirt that strained across his massive shoulders. He looked like a monument to something ancient and untamable. A god carved from stone and moonlight. "You can't stay up here all night," she called over the wind. Lucian didn't turn. "I can try." Serafina crossed the distance between them, her ribs still aching from Grant's blow but no longer screaming. Lucian had been healing faster since the serum left his system, and she suspected their incomplete bond was having the same effect on her. "We don't have time for this. Tomorrow Damon comes. If we run before the bond is complete, then you live." Now he did turn, and the anguish in his eyes stopped her cold. "Serafina, you don't understand what you're asking. The mating moon doesn't just complete a bond. For primal alphas it's..." He struggled for words. "It's annihilation. Everything I've been holding back, every instinct I've been crushing down for 7 years, it all comes out at once. The last 4 Omegas, they died during the mating moon. Not before. During. Because they weren't meant for you." Serafina stepped closer, tilting her head back to meet his gaze. Because they didn't have what I have. And what's that? A death wish. His voice cracked. Because that's what this feels like. You standing here, asking me to unleash the exact thing that's killed everyone else who got close. I have the blood of the sun seers. She said it simply a fact. My grandmother told me stories before she died. About the first omegas, the ones who could bond with the strongest alphas without breaking. They called them sun seers because their power burned bright enough to match even the most violent wolf. That bloodline was supposed to be extinct, but here I am. And here you are. Don't you think that means something? Lucian's hands clenched into fists at his sides. It means I've already lost you. Because even if you survive the bonding, and that's a massive if, Damon will come. And I'm not strong enough yet to protect you from an entire pack of enforcers. Not yet. Seraphina reached up, placed her hand over his heart. Felt it thundering against her palm. But you will be. Once the bond completes, once we're truly mated, you won't be fighting the rage anymore. You'll have something to anchor you. Someone to fight for instead of against. The moon climbed higher. Seraphina felt its pull intensify. Felt the heat building under her skin. This wasn't just attraction. This was cosmic. Inevitable. The moon knew what it wanted, and it wanted them joined. Lucian's control was visibly fraying. His eyes had begun to glow, that alpha luminescence that spoke of barely contained power. His breathing came faster. When he spoke, his voice had dropped to something between a growl and a plea. Seraphina, I'm begging you. Don't ask this of me. I can't, if I hurt you. If you die because I couldn't control myself. Then let go. She pressed closer, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his massive frame. Stop trying to control it. Stop trying to be gentle. Just let go and trust that I'm strong enough to meet you. You don't know what you're saying. I know exactly what I'm saying. She grabbed his face with both hands, forcing him to look at her. I'm saying I'm not afraid of you. I'm saying the moon chose us for a reason. I'm saying that every wolf who ever told me I was too fragile was wrong. And every wolf who told you that you were too dangerous was lying. We're meant for this. So stop protecting me from you and let me prove it. The moon hit its zenith. Something in Lucian snapped. He grabbed her, lifting her as if she weighed nothing, and suddenly they were moving. Not to the bedchamber, but to the great hall where the moonlight streamed through the massive windows in silver rivers. He set her down on the stone floor, and she saw the war in his eyes. The man fighting the wolf, civilization battling instinct. Last chance, he rasped. Run. Please. Run. Instead, Seraphina reached up and pulled him down to her. The kiss detonated between them like summer lightning. Every careful wall Lucian had built shattered. The control he'd maintained for 7 years evaporated like mist in a firestorm. His hands were on her everywhere, no longer careful but claiming. His mouth moved from her lips to her throat, and when his teeth grazed the mating gland there, Seraphina's entire world condensed to that single point of contact. This was what the moon wanted. This surrender. This fusion. Lucian pulled back for just a moment. His eyes wild, pupils blown so wide they'd almost consumed the gold. I can't stop. Tell me to stop. Please. Don't stop. Seraphina arched against him. Don't you dare stop. Something shifted in his expression. The last vestiges of the man gave way to the alpha, and when he claimed her mouth again, there was no hesitation, no fear, just absolute overwhelming certainty. The bond ignited. It started as heat, like someone had poured liquid fire through Seraphina's veins. Then it became pressure, building and building until she thought she'd shatter from the inside out. Lucian's hands tightened on her, his massive body covering hers, and she felt it. The moment his wolf recognized hers as mate. As equal. As the other half of a whole that had been incomplete since birth. The primal heat hit like an avalanche. Lucian's body began to change. Not a full shift, but something between. Muscles expanding, bones reinforcing. his sheer mass increasing until Seraphina should have been crushed beneath it. His control shattered completely, and the raw power that poured off him made the fortress shake. Stone cracked. Windows shattered. The moon itself seemed to pulse in sympathy. And Seraphina burned. Not with pain but with light. Gold light, bright as the sun at noon, erupting from her skin in waves. The sun-seer blood that had lain dormant for generations woke all at once, recognizing its purpose. She was the anchor, the stabilizer, the one who could hold a primal alpha's power and not just survive it but amplify it. Lucian's teeth found her mating gland, and when he bit down, the world exploded. The bond completed in a supernova of gold and silver. Seraphina screamed, not in agony but in transcendence, as Lucian's essence poured into her and hers poured into him. She felt everything he felt. The 7 years of isolation. The grief over the omegas he couldn't save. The rage that had been manufactured and the gentleness that had always been real. She felt his soul, and it was beautiful and broken and hers. And Lucian felt her. Felt 23 years of being dismissed. Felt the martyr complex that made her willing to die for others. Felt the steel core underneath the fragile exterior, the determination that had carried her up a mountain to claim a monster. He felt her faith in him, and it undid him completely. They moved together in the moonlight like a force of nature, not gentle, not careful, but absolutely right. Every time Lucian's control threatened to slip into something dangerous, Seraphina's light flared brighter, anchoring him. Every time the intensity threatened to overwhelm her, Lucian's strength held her together. They were alchemy, transformation. 2 broken pieces fusing into something that had never existed before. The fortress shook with the force of their joining. Down in the valley, every wolf in Shadow Ridge pack felt it, a pulse of power so immense it made the old pack bonds feel like cobwebs. The omegas looked up at the mountain in wonder. The alphas looked up in fear. And Damon, standing in his council hall with 20 enforcers at his back, felt it and knew he'd waited too long. The primal had found his mate. And she'd survived. Hours later, or maybe minutes, time had ceased to have meaning. Seraphina lay in Lucian's arms on the cold stone floor, both of them breathing like they'd run a marathon. Sweat and moonlight covered their skin. The mating bite on her throat throbbed in perfect time with her heartbeat, permanent and possessive. Lucian's hand trembled as he traced the mark. "You're alive," he whispered like he couldn't quite believe it. "You're here. I told you." Seraphina's voice was hoarse but triumphant. "I told you I was strong enough." He pulled her closer, careful again now that the moon's influence was waning, and she felt him shake. Not from withdrawal or rage, but from relief so profound it bordered on religious. "I can feel you," he breathed. "Inside my head. Inside my chest. You're everywhere." "Good." She pressed her palm flat against his sternum, and even now, the connection sparked between them. The bond was complete, permanent, unbreakable. "Because you're stuck with me now. For better or worse." "Seraphina." He caught her hand, brought it to his lips. "The gold light. What you did. Sun-seer." She smiled, tired but victorious. "Turns out my grandmother's stories were true. My bloodline was meant for this. Meant to stabilize primals like you. To prove that size isn't a curse. It's a gift when you have the right partner." Lucian stared at her like she'd hung the moon itself. "You saved me. We saved each other." She sat up, wincing at the pleasant aches in muscles she'd forgotten she had. Through the shattered windows, dawn was beginning to break. Pink and gold light spilled across the fortress. "But we're not done yet. Damon. We'll come at sunrise." Lucian rose to his feet, and for the first time since she'd met him, he didn't hunch, didn't try to make himself smaller. He stood at his full, towering height, and the power radiating off him was no longer chaotic. It was controlled, precise, deadly. "Let him come. I'm not afraid anymore." Seraphina stood beside him, her small frame next to his massive one, and through the bond, she felt his certainty become hers. Felt his strength and gave him hers in return. They were no longer an omega and an alpha. They were an apex pair. The first Shadow Ridge had seen in generations. And when Daemon's enforcers arrived with their silver nets and wolfsbane, they were going to learn exactly what that meant. The cage was shattered. The monster was free. But he wasn't alone anymore. They descended the mountain at dawn, and the pack felt them coming. It wasn't just footsteps. It was presence, a pressure in the air that made every wolf in Shadow Ridge lift their heads and turn toward the mountain. The apex pair walked side by side, Lucian no longer trying to hide his size, Seraphina's hand clasped in his. Where their skin touched, golden light flickered and pulsed, visible even in daylight. The bond sang between them, a frequency that resonated through the pack bonds and made them shiver. Daemon's enforcers were waiting at the base of the mountain path. 20 warriors in formation, silver nets gleaming in the morning sun, crossbows loaded with wolfsbane bolts. Grant wasn't among them, still recovering from his shattered ribs, but Morgana stood at the front, her smile sharp as broken glass. "That's far enough, Primal," she called. "By order of High Alpha Daemon, you're to be detained for breaking confinement and endangering pack members." Lucian didn't slow, didn't stop, just kept walking with that same steady, inevitable pace. Morgana's smile faltered. "I said stop." "No." Lucian's voice carried across the clearing, calm and absolute. "I'm done taking orders from cowards who poison wolves and call it protection." The enforcers shifted nervously. They'd been told to expect a feral monster, barely controlled, easy to contain. The wolf walking toward them was none of those things. He was lucid, powerful, and absolutely certain of his purpose. "Fire!" Morgana snapped. Crossbows sang. 6 bolts, all aimed at center mass, all coated in enough wolfsbane to drop a normal alpha instantly. Lucian caught 3 mid-flight with his bare hands, the wolfsbane sizzling against his palm without effect. The other 3 Seraphina deflected with a burst of golden light that erupted from her hands like a shield. The bolts disintegrated into ash. The enforcers stared. "Did I mention," Seraphina said pleasantly, "that Sunseers are immune to wolfsbane? And that our mates share that immunity through the bond?" Morgana's face went white. "Impossible. That bloodline is standing right in front of you." Seraphina's eyes blazed gold. "Your High Alpha has been lying to all of you. About Lucian. About the Omegas who died. About what primal alphas really are. Do you want to keep following a wolf who murders innocent people to maintain power? Or do you want to hear the truth?" The enforcers exchanged glances. Doubt flickered across their faces. These were good wolves, loyal wolves, who'd been told they were protecting the pack. Finding out they'd been tools of oppression was a hard pill to swallow. "Don't listen to her," Morgana snarled. "She's manipulated him, seduced him. The primal is dangerous. I was dangerous because you made me that way." Lucian's voice cut through Morgana's protests like a blade. 7 years of rage serum. 7 years of being told I was a monster. 7 years of having Omegas sent to their deaths, so Daemon could justify keeping me locked away. But I'm not dangerous anymore. I'm just done. He took another step forward and the enforcers actually backed up. Not from fear of violence, but from the sheer presence of him. This wasn't a beast. This was an alpha in full command of himself, and the difference was staggering. "Stand down," one of the enforcers said quietly. Then louder. "I said stand down." The crossbows lowered. One by one, the enforcers stepped aside, creating a path through their formation. Morgana watched in horror as her entire force defected without a single blow being struck. "You're all traitors," she hissed. "No," the enforcer replied. "We're just tired of being lied to." Lucian and Seraphina walked through the parted ranks like monarchs reclaiming their kingdom. Behind them, the enforcers fell into step, no longer an opposing force but an escort. By the time they reached the valley floor, half the pack had gathered to watch. The Omegas were at the front of the crowd. Seraphina saw their faces, women who'd spent their lives being told they were fragile, expendable, too weak to matter. They stared at her walking beside the primal who'd killed 4 of their sisters, and instead of fear, she saw something else in their eyes. "Oh, is it true?" one of them called out. A young woman, barely 20, with scars on her wrists from where she'd been shackled during her own heat cycles. "Did you survive the mating moon?" Seraphina stopped, turned to face them, pulled down the collar of her shirt to reveal the mating bite on her throat, still glowing faintly with golden light. "I did more than survive. Thrive. 'Cause I was never too fragile. None of us are. We've just been told we are by wolves who benefit from our silence." A ripple went through the Omega crowd. Whispers. Then something louder. One woman started crying. Another laughed, a sharp sound of disbelief and joy mixed together. "The council lied," Seraphina continued, her voice carrying across the gathering. "About Lucian. About what primals need. About what Omegas can do. They fed him poison to make him violent, then sent women to die so they could maintain the lie that we need protecting. But we don't need protection. We need truth. We need justice. And we need wolves who won't use our lives as political tools." The crowd erupted. Not in violence, but in voices, questions, accusations, demands. The pack had been wound tight for years under Damon's rule, and Seraphina's words were the spark that lit the fuse. "Seraphina." He caught her hand, brought it to his lips. "The gold light. What you did. Sun seer." She smiled, tired but victorious. "Turns out my grandmother's stories were true. My bloodline was meant for this. Meant to stabilize primals like you. To prove that size isn't a curse. It's a gift when you have the right partner." Lucian stared at her like she'd hung the moon itself. "You saved me. We saved each other." She sat up, wincing at the pleasant aches in muscles she'd forgotten she had. Through the shattered windows, dawn was beginning to break. Pink and gold light spilled across the fortress. "But we're not done yet. Damon. We'll come at sunrise." Lucian rose to his feet, and for the first time since she'd met him, he didn't hunch. Didn't try to make himself smaller. He stood at his full, towering height, and the power radiating off him was no longer chaotic. It was controlled. Precise. Deadly. "Let him come. I'm not afraid anymore." Seraphina stood beside him, her small frame next to his massive one, and through the bond, she felt his certainty become hers. Felt his strength and gave him hers in return. They were no longer an Omega and an Alpha. They were an apex pair. The first Shadow Ridge had seen in generations. And when Damon's enforcers arrived with their silver nets and wolfsbane, they were going to learn exactly what that meant. The cage was shattered. The monster was free. But he wasn't alone anymore. They descended the mountain at dawn, and the pack felt them coming. It wasn't just footsteps. It was presence, a pressure in the air that made every wolf in Shadow Ridge lift their heads and turn toward the mountain. The apex pair walked side by side, Lucian no longer trying to hide his size, Seraphina's hand clasped in his. Where their skin touched, golden light flickered and pulsed, visible even in daylight. The bond sang between them, a frequency that resonated through the pack bonds and made them shiver. Damon's enforcers were waiting at the base of the mountain path. 20 warriors in formation, silver nets gleaming in the morning sun, crossbows loaded with wolfsbane bolts. Grant wasn't among them, still recovering from his shattered ribs, but Morgana stood at the front, her smile sharp as broken glass. "That's far enough, Primal," she called. "By order of High Alpha Damon, you're to be detained for breaking confinement and endangering pack members." Lucian didn't slow, didn't stop, just kept walking with that same steady, inevitable pace. Morgana's smile faltered. "I said stop." "No." Lucian's voice carried across the clearing, calm and absolute. "I'm done taking orders from cowards who poison wolves and call it protection." The enforcers shifted nervously. They'd been told to expect a feral monster, barely controlled, easy to contain. The wolf walking toward them was none of those things. He was lucid, powerful, and absolutely certain of his purpose. Fire! Morgana snapped. Crossbows sang. 6 bolts, all aimed at center mass, all coated in enough wolfsbane to drop a normal alpha instantly. Lucian caught 3 mid-flight with his bare hands, the wolfsbane sizzling against his palm without effect. The other 3 Seraphina deflected with a burst of golden light that erupted from her hands like a shield. The bolts disintegrated into ash. The enforcers stared. "Did I mention," Seraphina said pleasantly, "that Sunseers are immune to wolfsbane? And that our mates share that immunity through the bond?" Morgana's face went white. "Impossible. That bloodline is standing right in front of you." Seraphina's eyes blazed gold. "Your high alpha has been lying to all of you. About Lucian. About the Omegas who died. About what primal alphas really are. Do you want to keep following a wolf who murders innocent people to maintain power? Or do you want to hear the truth?" The enforcers exchanged glances. Doubt flickered across their faces. These were good wolves, loyal wolves, who'd been told they were protecting the pack. Finding out they'd been tools of oppression was a hard pill to swallow. "Don't listen to her," Morgana snarled. "She's manipulated him. Seduced him. The primal is dangerous. I was dangerous because you made me that way." Lucian's voice cut through Morgana's protests like a blade. 7 years of rage serum. 7 years of being told I was a monster. 7 years of having Omegas sent to their deaths, so Damon could justify keeping me locked away. But I'm not dangerous anymore. I'm just done. He took another step forward and the enforcers actually backed up. Not from fear of violence, but from the sheer presence of him. This wasn't a beast. This was an alpha in full command of himself, and the difference was staggering. "Stand down," one of the enforcers said quietly. Then louder. "I said stand down." The crossbows lowered. One by one, the enforcers stepped aside, creating a path through their formation. Morgana watched in horror as her entire force defected without a single blow being struck. "You're all traitors," she hissed. "No," the enforcer replied. "We're just tired of being lied to." Lucian and Seraphina walked through the parted ranks like monarchs reclaiming their kingdom. Behind them, the enforcers fell into step, no longer an opposing force but an escort. By the time they reached the valley floor, half the pack had gathered to watch. The Omegas were at the front of the crowd. Seraphina saw their faces, women who'd spent their lives being told they were fragile, expendable, too weak to matter. They stared at her walking beside the primal who'd killed 4 of their sisters, and instead of fear, she saw something else in their eyes. "Oh, is it true?" one of them called out. A young woman, barely 20, with scars on her wrists from where she'd been shackled during her own heat cycles. "Did you survive the mating moon?" Seraphina stopped, turned to face them, pulled down the collar of her shirt to reveal the mating bite on her throat, still glowing faintly with golden light. "I did more than survive. Thrive. 'Cause I was never too fragile. None of us are. We've just been told we are by wolves who benefit from our silence." A ripple went through the Omega crowd. Whispers. Then something louder. One woman started crying. Another laughed, a sharp sound of disbelief and joy mixed together. "The council lied," Seraphina continued, her voice carrying across the gathering. "About Lucian. About what primals need. About what Omegas can do. They fed him poison to make him violent, then sent women to die so they could maintain the lie that we need protecting. But we don't need protection. We need truth. We need justice. And we need wolves who won't use our lives as political tools." The crowd erupted. Not in violence, but in voices, questions, accusations, demands. The pack had been wound tight for years under Damon's rule, and Seraphina's words were the spark that lit the fuse. Thank you for joining the pack today. If this story pulled you in, make sure to subscribe and tap the moon bell so you never miss the next Alpha Destiny. And tell me in the comments, who should we follow next under the full moon?